From the dark recesses of my unconscious mind into the glaring light of objective reality. You are listening to the Dark Mind Podcast. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode where we explore the boundless realm of dark literature and film. On today's show, we have a writer that throws his readers headfirst into the blood-soaked world of splatterpunk. His characters are complex and depraved, and the violence is obscenely masterful. He's joining me today to talk about his new novel, Plastic Monsters. So without further ado, join me as we delve into the dark insight of Daniel J. Volpe. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, Vincent.
Thank you for being here. I was floored when I read Plastic Monsters, and I have got so many questions about how you wrote such a well-crafted story and such complex characters.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer the questions, and thank you for reading. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, I've described Plastic Monsters to more than one person as, quote, the skillful exposition of malignant narcissism. And that seems to be running rampant these days, especially in the realm of social media. So where did you get the inspiration to write a story that puts that phenomenon on display?
It was kind of a culmination of a bunch of things. Really, I kind of wanted to do a sick plastic surgery story at one point in time. I had this idea of like body harvesting and body parts and whatnot. I'm like, God, it'd be pretty cool to do something kind of messed up like that. And then the more and more I've seen things just throughout society, and for those of you that don't know, I have two daughters who are fairly young, but even at their ages, there's still a lot of body shaming and stuff like that, even at their age. And I graduated high school actually with Pam pretty much in that 03 range where she is. So a lot of the girls that are in that book are actually girls that are from high school. Not by name, so don't anybody.
But based very closely on particular people?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think a lot of high schools are like that. You always have that clique of mean girls and stuff. And I kind of wanted just to explore that realm of plastic surgery. I have no surgical background or anything like that. Everything was just research and watching a lot of gross videos and botched surgeries. And it just kind of came to me. I kind of put everything together, and Plastic Monsters was birthed upon the world.
So I'm curious, where are you finding these videos and the material you're talking about for your research? Is that something you can find on YouTube, or are you going into the deep, dark depths of the internet?
I don't even think I'm smart enough to access the dark web. It was a lot of just Google searches and YouTube videos, watching documentaries on botched surgeries, and just some of these doctors that are just... Actually, I just saw an article today about an anesthesiologist that was doing something similar.
Really? Not
to this extent. He actually pretty much violated this woman's mouth during her C-section while she was unconscious at some point. And yeah, so these people are among us. Just because they have PhDs and these doctors doesn't mean they're any better than some of these other deviants that we see in the world.
No, that just makes them more dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the character of Dr. DeBiro was really interesting because, unlike Pam, who was driven by physical vanity, his narcissism was about power and status. There are notorious serial killers that were doctors, and even some that are not, like you just spoke about. And even though Dr. DeBiro wasn't a serial killer per se, was he based on any real-life psychotic doctors in particular, or was it just kind of the amalgamation of what you were talking about? You kind of pieced them together.
Yeah, he was just like a piecemeal kind of thing. And I'm like, what would some of these sickos do if they had this opportunity? And I often think about in the Hostel, if you remember the movie Hostel, I forgot the character's name, but the one guy who he's obviously one of the killers and stuff. And he said he does it for such a rush. And he's like, I've had all these prostitutes all over the world and I've done this and that. He's like, but there's nothing like the rush of this power pretty much and taking somebody's life and to know that you have this ultimate control over them. So I kind of took a little bit from him and just some of the sick things that you've seen, some, malpractice suits, and just if you got somebody who was just so disturbed and they had this power. So that's how he kind of came to be.
When you brought up Hostel, I thought immediately that you were going to go to, I guess it's probably the last guy that is actually a doctor himself, but can't perform surgery anymore because he's got tremors too bad.
Yeah, he was a cool character too. But no, I always thought about that guy when he was, can we curse on here?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Fuck yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure when he's like, oh, I've had every piece of pussy in the world. It's like, I don't remember what the girl's tits looked like from the night before. He's like, but there was something about this, such a rush. And I'm like, that's kind of what I thought. Like this guy, had the family, had the money, had the prestige, but he had those little tiny secrets and carving his name in people and doing all these sick things and taking pictures was like the ultimate for him.
Yeah. Well, so I love how you, even though he did a lot of sick shit, I love how you cast Dr. DeBiro as sort of an anti-hero. And the first scene that comes to mind that illustrates that is when he's looking at the family photo album and mourning the loss of ever seeing his family again because they've obviously completely disowned him. So you see that he's capable of love, but then he continues on to the photos of his victims, and the whole scene goes from sad to extremely disturbing. So why do you think that humanizing a villain a little bit makes them so much more terrifying than if they were just complete raging sociopaths?
I truly think that every person has a little bit of a villain inside of them. And hopefully not to the extent of some of these horror villains, obviously, where they're killing people or maiming or doing all this horrible stuff. But I think everybody has just that little bit inside of them. And to show that human side, like John Wayne Gacy had a family and he was horrifically murdering, torturing, I believe it was young boys mostly. So these people, they are people. And some of them are just completely warped, deranged. They have no emotion or anything like that. They can't show any kind of love. But I think humanizing that monster makes them even more terrifying. Like Michael Myers is just, the shape, or I think the boogeyman, or whatever they call them. And, it's scary because it's a slasher and he's coming to get you, but there's no humanity to him.
Yeah. Whereas
you have somebody like, we'll say like Hannibal Lecter or something like that, where he has this intelligence about him and everything he does is calculating, and he just doesn't have that piece of his brain to let him know like this isn't wrong, or he does and he doesn't acknowledge it. I think those human monsters make it all more terrifying.
Have you ever read anything of Carl Jung, the psychologist?
No, I've never read any of his stuff.
His whole concept of the shadow self, like to become a complete individual is to integrate with your shadow, not repress it, because, fucked up shit will come bubbling to the surface, and definitely don't let it overcome you and just become a pure sociopath. So I think possibly your character may have been trying to repress some shit until it took him over.
Yeah, I'm actually reading a book by Brian Smith right now. I think it's The Reborn, and it opens up with a character like that where he's wanting to kill and kill and kill, and he finally just has to succumb to it. Like he can't fight it off anymore. So, it's definitely, there's people like that. And, we watch interviews with serial killers and they talk about that same thing, how for years they tried to fight it and killing animals and whatever, and finally they couldn't fight it anymore.
Right. Well, so I really like how you gave us the full picture of Pam's development. If I didn't know anything about her upbringing, I would probably hate her character. But because I know her backstory, even though she's ultimately responsible for her own bad behavior, I understand it, and it makes me feel bad for what ultimately happens to her. Can you tell us a little bit about your process for the development of these complex backstories for your characters?
Actually, for Pam, I will give full credit. Actually, my wife just speak then. I give full credit to my wife for that because she read the original version, which didn't have any of Pam's backstory in it. And she was like, she just seems like a bitch. Like she's just this evil character for no reason. You have to have a reason why she's like this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. She's like, if you're just come into her being crazy like this, there's no sympathy for her. So she's like, you got to do some kind of backstory. So I was like, okay. So I went back and I wrote that opening chapter with her in the locker room, which is obviously very remiss of Carrie. And then the interlude, I guess you'll say, in the middle on the softball field. So I give full credit to my wife for that because she was the one that came up with that idea.
Does that happen a lot? Does she give you some pointers, especially in maybe female characters, maybe some insight into the mindset of female characters?
This was actually the first time that she really had any kind of input before the book was finished. You know, she read this one. I got a print copy, and I was like, I want you just to read it because obviously I'm not a woman, and I wanted her to read it to make sure I got the perspective and the things I was talking about were accurate. Mm-hmm. But no, she's read everything, and for the most part, this was the first time she's actually kind of told me, like, hey, you need to change this, this, and this.
Okay. Well, so I really love the technical medical detail that you bring to the book. And a prime example is when the surgery is being done, the doctor is using propofol, which is the actual drug that's used in anesthesia. And I was briefly disappointed when I found out that the doctor didn't have a ventilator, because you can't put someone under without being on a ventilator. But then I find that the missing ventilator was intentional, so you could create the terrifying scenario of Pam being told that because he didn't have a ventilator, he couldn't put her all the way under. So that and your description of the specific parts of the physical anatomy made me wonder if you had a medical background, which you said you do not.
No, that's just all Google researching and trying to. I like things to have some kind of reality. And in some of my books, I do play in the supernatural realm, like in Talia. Talia is like it's the bloody, smutty good time. And, you know, you got to suspend disbelief for that. Mm-hmm. But for this book, I want to really stay in the realm of reality and want you to think that this could happen. Granted, the things that happen would never happen in the world. I don't know if propofol acts exactly the way it does, but I do know that if you anesthetize somebody for that amount of time with that drug, they have to be ventilated or they're going to stop breathing. But then I'm trying to think of scenarios. I'm like, how do I make this possible without him having a ventilator here? And I'm like, well, he's just not going to use enough of it. Just put him under just enough to hopefully get it done in time. And again, like you said, it made it all that more terrifying because now you have a time restraint, you have a health restraint, and you just have no idea what's going to happen.
And on top of that, she's more than likely laying there helpless, can't react, but is feeling the pain of the actual incisions and everything, which I won't spoil what's going on. But that was really solid. I was listening to you on the Generic podcast, and you said that when it came to outlining, you didn't do one that was like incredibly detailed. It was more of like a flexible outline. Is that still the case?
Yeah, for the most part, I kind of like to have some kind of outline because I want to know where I'm going. And it kind of gives me a sense of completion without even writing the book, because in my mind, I'm like, all right, I have the outline done and it's a solid outline, but it still has some flexibility. And it makes it easier for me to work through any kind of writer's block, or if I'm having like an off day and I'm like, all right, I know I have to get some words out today, I just go to the outline. Or if I have to take a long break, because occasionally projects do pop up, I am a glutton for punishment. So I will have a million deadlines and take on a million more and have to stop one book in the middle to work on another book. So having that outline is great. If I have to come back to something a month or two later, I know exactly where I was. But they're not, like I said, there's not anything too definitive. I leave room for some ideas. Like I finished up writing Talia 2 about a month or two ago, and I had a good outline for that, but some things changed partway through it. I had to move a couple chapters from here to there, and it all seemed to work out. Hopefully. We'll see what the readers think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. DeBiro and Pam engage in what I would call the crime of the century. So without giving away the conspiracy, do you know the ending before you start the outline, or does it kind of evolve?
It evolves.
Like within it? Okay.
Yeah. For Plastic Monsters, there was a completely different ending until I started actually getting towards the ending. And I'm like, no, I can't end it like this. Like, I have to end it this way. And then I end up thinking of a couple scenarios in my head. And I'm like, nope, I want to end it like the way I decided to. A couple of my books are like that. Some of them are where, like, I think A Gift of Death, I had that ending pretty much mapped out. That book came to me and it was like a bolt of lightning. Like that book, like, shot into my brain. I jotted all the notes down and I literally wrote the entire book in like the Christmas break, like 2 weeks. I banged the whole thing out. Yeah. I think the last day of writing, I marathoned down in my basement where I'm sitting right now. And I did like the last like 7,000 or 8,000 words in one day. So yeah, sometimes the ending, like for the ending for Talia 2, that came to me, that all was pretty accurate. Some of the things in the middle changed, but the ending was spot on what I thought it was going to be.
Well, you know, without getting too deep into it, can you walk me through the long and the short of the process of how one of your books goes from inception to publication, like as far as revision, editing, beta reading, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. I always carry a little notepad with me. Generally, most of my notes are taken on my phone. I will literally just use the note app or a voice recorder app on there, and I'll take some notes down. When I have enough and I think that, hey, this is my next project, I'll then go into like an outlining phase where I'll sit down with like a legal pad and I'll just write chapter 1. And I'll just kind of just stream of consciousness, write out my thoughts of what I want to happen as the story progresses. And then I kind of let that sit for a while. And then I try to adhere to a fairly strict schedule of writing. Monday through Friday, I try to get up early, usually at 5, take care of the dogs, and then I sit down and I write until I have to go to work. So it's generally about 45 minutes a day of writing, and I can get around between 800 and 1,300 words a day. Most of my books are fairly short. They fall in that novella range. So I've been finding like 40,000 words is like my sweet spot. Once I finish writing a book, I won't touch it for months. I will write the first draft and I just put it away and I start something else. And then when I have to get it ready, so like I have one coming up for publication through D&T Publishing in December. So that one I have to start getting prepped. I'll go back through and I use the read aloud function in Microsoft Word where a robotic voice just pretty much reads your story to you. That really, really helps with editing for me because then I can hear all the little mistakes where I might need a comma because I'm not the best with grammar. I mean, I'm not an English teacher or anything like that. So I have editors. I go through all that as best as I physically can. And if I wanted to have like a beta read, like if something's not working, I will send it out to some beta readers, but that's usually very few and far between. If I'm self-publishing it, then I'll contact an editor. Usually I've been using Pat Harrison from Death's Head. He's been my primary editor. I actually co-wrote Visceral 2 with him. I'll send it out to him. He's very quick, very thorough. He'll get it back to me. I'll give it another run of edits myself just to make sure there's nothing that's missed. Then again, if I'm self-publishing it, I will then order a proof copy because I have to read it physically in a paperback. I get my paperback copy in. I'll go through it again. I'll reread it, make any more edits that have to be done, re-input the final file, and say a prayer and send it to the interwebs.
Give it the blessing.
Yeah.
Send it off.
And in there as well, obviously, I will contact cover artists, get all that stuff rolling. I'm not an artist, but sometimes I have some ideas of what I kind of want. Like for the cover of Plastic Monsters, I had no idea what I wanted. I reached out to Don Noble, who was like a fucking wizard. And I was like, Don, it's plastic surgery horror. It's about this, this, and this. This is what happens in it. Do your thing. And he gave me a beautiful cover. That was like the first cover I think I've ever gotten from anybody that the first time, that was it. Like the font, the picture, the layout, everything on it was perfect. If it's going through a publisher, again, it's a little different. They send it to their editors. Their editors will then reach out to me and I'll give it a final proof edit. And then we'll talk about what we want to do for the cover as well.
And did I understand correctly? Obviously, you do use professional editors, but are there times where you don't?
No.
Certain books where you edit yourself?
No, I'm terrible at it.
Okay, you always have somebody far removed. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hire editors that are honest. Like there's nothing worse than getting an editor that doesn't have a good track record and an editor that's just going to fluff you and be like, oh, yeah, this is great, because I know it's not. I know it needs work. That's why I'm hiring you. Early on in my writing career, I used one editor, and he was a good editor, but he took a while to work. So I've since switched, and now I'll use at least one editor. Sometimes if it's a longer piece, I might hire 2 editors, have one edit it, and then be like, hey, this has already been primarily edited by this guy. Can you just run through it again and give me your rate? It's worth the money. For any aspiring writers out there, if you're going to self-publish, don't skimp on editing and your cover art. Those are 2 very, very important things. The layout, interior layout is great. It looks cool if you have fancy images and stuff like that. But if you have typos on every other page, or you have a clip art cover that looks like my 3rd grader did it, there's a good chance people may not pick it up. And that's just the truth of it. Because I was that guy that had a shitty cover to begin with for my first book, Billy Silver. And I had a few honest people like, hey, dude, that cover sucks. Like you need something better. I'm like, you're right. So I hired a professional cover artist and I got a much better cover.
Yeah, I guess people do literally judge a book by its cover. It's the first thing they see, so you got to catch their attention.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so I believe, if I've got it correct, the next novel or novella in line before Plastic Monsters was Left to You. Is that right?
Only Psychos.
Only Psychos. Okay.
Technically, it was Visceral 2. Visceral 2 is a short story collection I did with Pat Harrison, but my other solo project before that was Only Psychos.
Okay. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about Only Psychos?
So Only Psychos is, that was a really fun book to write. Pretty much the premise is a mother and her 2 children they live in upstate New York. There's like a storm of the century rolling in and another one right behind it, a snowstorm. Her husband's at work and they lose power. House is very cold. And during the break in the storm, she talks to him and he's like, just go to the local chain motel and wait out the storm. I'll be home in the morning and we'll get through this. She goes there. The chain hotel is booked solid. So she has to go to the local dumpy, shady, weird hotel. And as she's going there, other unsavory characters are also being forced off the highways into this hotel. And this hotel is run by some very, very bad people that have a very dark secret hidden in their basement. And hilarity ensues. It just gets crazy in there, and all the lights go out and the emergency red lights come on and everything kind of goes crazy. But what I tell people is this is actually loosely based on a true story, because when we were kids, this almost exact thing happened where I live in upstate New York. We lost power. It was freezing cold. My dad was at work working overnights. My mom didn't know what to do. 4 kids. I'm the oldest, and I was probably 10, maybe 11 at the time. And my youngest sibling was probably 3. So my dad was like, just go to the Best Western and spend the night. And us as kids thought it was the greatest thing. It was fun. You get to sleep in a hotel and it was cool. And we got to the Best Western. And then as an adult, I thought to myself, what would have happened if didn't get there? What if we couldn't get there? It was full. We had to go to the little shady place that was a mom and pop place down the road that was old and, presumably haunted and all this stuff. So that's how that kind
Bates Motel.
Yeah, pretty much. That's how that story kind of grew legs. And I told my siblings about it, and they were laughing about it because they remember. Well, my sister at least does because she's around my age. But that's how that one was born.
So now you're saying in that story, obviously the people that run the motel are crazy, but there's also crazy people forced off the road with them?
Yeah, there's you have a guy who's a serial killer who's got a dead body that he is driving with. He has a guy that he murdered, and he has him dressed like a woman sitting in the passenger seat. You have 2 budding porn stars that are like 19-year-old teenagers that are just going around the country making videos, almost like OnlyFans. They're going around making videos. They're putting them up online, making money. You have a lawyer that is running from a motorcycle gang because he ripped them off for money and meth, and he's smoking the hell out of some meth. And then you have this sweet mother and her 2 children that just happen to get forced into this hotel.
Damn the luck.
Yeah, I know.
Well, so I've heard a lot about Talia. Tell me about that.
So Talia is a character in my first novella, Billy Silver. And Talia, if you read Billy Silver, she's a very mysterious kind of character. She ends up meeting Billy Silver and giving him some very weird tattoo, which kind of starts driving him insane. After I wrote that book, people were asking me like, oh, what about this Talia woman? What's up with her? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, what's her backstory? I'm like, I don't know. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a book about her. So I wanted to explore her background. So I decided to make my own little novella. And I always wanted to kind of do like a snuff film novella. And I love vengeance stories. Like, I love revenge. I think it's great. Most people love revenge stories. So I was like, I'm going to do a snuff revenge story. So I decided to write Talia. Pretty much she is a Midwest girl that gets wrapped up with some bad people in New York City, ends up getting herself way over her head, and really bad things happen to her and people around her. And let's just say she gets hers in the end. And surprisingly, that book is done very, very well with female readers. There is sexual assault. There's sexual violence in it. And I've had women reach out and tell me that what happens in that book really helped them get through their own personal dilemmas, which is great to hear, because anytime I can entertain and help people is the goal. It's phenomenal. And Talia's kind of spawned a life of her own. I have one of my readers recently got a tattoo of the book cover on his arm. I posted that. I've had fan fiction pictures taken. I had this one woman, Charlie. She's awesome. She modeled as Talia and took a picture of herself with the razor. People are telling me they're going to be her for Halloween. And now I have book 2 is done. I just have to get it edited. And I think I'm going to try to release it next year around March. So I have copies for Scares That Care in the end of March, beginning of April. So
can you give us a little insight on Talia too, or are you keeping that for?
No, I have no problem giving a little background to it. Talia to me is like my Jason Voorhees character. When you read Talia, you're not getting like any kind of philosophical depth in it. It's sex and violence and vengeance for the most part. It's a beach read. I always call it like a beach read. Like, you can kind of lay down on the beach, read it, put it down, have a couple beers, pick it back up and be like, where was I? Oh, this looks like a good spot. It's just meant to be fun. It's not meant to be serious. Even the cover, like when I reveal a cover for the second book, people are going to be like, all right, like it's just kind of, it's fun. So Talia 2 takes place a few years after the first one ends. And Talia, as we know, goes through a certain transformation in the first book. And she wakes up and she's given an assignment. And she's pretty much sent to like this town where there is a school that is run by pretty much an asshole of a principal who does really, really bad things. He has a lot of the teachers and the townspeople under his thumb, has a certain group of students that he uses as enforcers to do his bidding. And they've drawn the attention of some people they shouldn't have drawn the attention of. And one of them happens to be Talia. And she is pretty much sent there to right the wrongs. And that's pretty much it. It's going to be called Talia 2, Halls of Blood. It's school settings stuff. So there's the correlation for that. I have a third one planned that I will write probably in the next year or so. And that'll be it. I'll do a one trilogy with her and go on from there.
And you mentioned Scares That Care.
So Scares That Care is a convention that takes place in Williamsburg, Virginia, and it's a charity convention. And last year they did, or this year I should say, they did the first ever Scares That Care AuthorCon, where it was just authors that were invited or that were allowed to purchase tables. So I had a great time in April, and they're doing another one next April. So I already bought my tickets for my table and everything like that. And I like to have something new to bring when I go to these conventions. And since Talia is one of my biggest draws, I would like to have that book ready for that convention so that people can pick it up and get a signed copy there.
Well, I saw the video teaser for the big announcement you were doing with Aron. I hear two different things. Is it Beauregard or Beauregard?
He doesn't even fucking know.
Okay.
He changes it like every other day. He's actually texting me right now. I'm actually in a group chat with him and Chris Triana. And, but yeah, he changes it every fucking day. So I don't know. I just call Aron Beauregard or whatever the fuck he says.
Okay. Well, so I saw you and Aron doing a video announcement where you were going to go onto Facebook Live and make a big announcement. I unfortunately do not have Facebook, but from what I gather, it involved a short story compilation called Obituaries. Is that correct?
I should have one right. So myself, Aron, and Chris Triana, we decided to do this little kind of almost like they're all triple signed here.
Nice.
These are all sold out, by the way, so you can't have this one. This is my copy. So we decided we wanted to do something to try to give something cool to the readers, something collectible, because we're all kind of, not all of us, but some of us are collectors. Like I have a couple signed books, mostly Ed Lee books. We want to do something cool for the readers. We want to do something private to kind of stay away from Amazon, and we want to do something just exclusive that only the hardcore readers would be able to pick up. And sometimes, as you may or may not know, if you ever heard a little thing called cancel culture, sometimes that happens. And Amazon, especially, if you put something too explicit on Amazon, somebody complains, you can get yourself in some trouble with your account. So we decided we were going to do this on our own. We were going to fund it ourselves. We were going to print a limited number of copies, and we were just going to go as hardcore as we could. And we were going to go all out, and that was it. We printed out 350 copies that are all triple signed and numbered. And myself and Aron went to Chris's house, and we did a live video on Facebook, and pretty much it was first come, first serve. Whoever was able to scrap them up, they end up getting the books, and the second one will be out for Halloween. It was such an overwhelming success that we decided we were going to launch a second one. Actually, that's what they're messaging me about, is we're getting our stories situated for formatting coming up soon. So
awesome.
Yep. And we have some very, very big news coming in 2023 for the Obituaries. And I think people are going to shit their pants when we reveal what's coming next. Yeah.
Pants shitting. Awesome.
Shat upon. Yeah. Like
shat upon.
Loads of shit everywhere. It's going to be amazing.
So much shit.
Everywhere.
Well, it surprises me what you said about Amazon, because, I mean, I literally just bought a copy of The Big Head. Are you guys going harder than The Big Head?
I think you ever go harder than The Big Head. It's not so much the content, it's the people that will report you. So if you get somebody, you write something that's a little bit out of their comfort zone, for whatever reason, they're reading extreme horror, they'll report you to Amazon. And we don't want to share any of our profits. We decided we were going to fund it ourselves. So we're like, you know what? Let's cut them out. We're not going to do an e-copy of it. It was just these couple, just to give it a shot. And our readers are fucking rock stars. They came through in a big way. They made us really feel appreciated and loved, and they grabbed them all up before we could blink. I mean, I think within a week and a half, all 350 copies between the three of us were sold out. So it was great.
Well, what is your writing medium? Is it as simple as a laptop, or do you have some special quirky thing you do?
Nope, laptop.
Just laptop?
Laptop, Microsoft Word. I was using Google Docs for a while, but then it started getting glitchy, and then I started losing things. And so I will use Google Docs as like a backup, just to save it in like a cloud system, because I don't use the Microsoft Word cloud. I don't really like it. Not a big fan of it. I just use 2 flash drives, Microsoft Word. I triple save it there, and then I will copy and paste it into Google Docs as just a backup to save it. My problem is I don't have like a good note-taking system because I take notes in like so many different places. So most of it's on my phone. But like I said, I carry a little notepad and a pen. Because I am a father, I do wear cargo pants and cargo shorts. So I always have all that extra space. So
fanny pack?
At conventions, I always wear a fanny pack.
Okay, awesome.
It's flamingo one.
You can't claim that unless you wear a fanny pack. So I was just making sure.
Oh, I do. You gotta go. Oh, you don't have Facebook, but if you can check out like even Instagram and stuff, there's pictures of me at the conventions wearing a flamingo fanny pack and
nice,
just drinking beers. It's a great time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I take notes on everything. I find it a lot easier to outline with pen and paper, just because I kind of get that stream of consciousness and start writing it out. Whereas I used to outline typing, I kind of like outlining with just a legal pad.
Gotcha. Well, I was going to ask you what your writing atmosphere is, but I think I'm looking at you and your writing atmosphere, correct?
Yeah, I kind of bounce around a little bit. So in the mornings when I get up, I'm usually the only one up. I take care of the dogs and stuff. So like I said, I usually will write upstairs in the living room. If it's a busy day or the kids are just being a pain in the ass, I'll come down to my lair down in the basement here. And I'll sit down here and I'll write. But for the most part, I literally just sit at my computer desk upstairs because it's quiet and nobody's up. But I can write anywhere. Doesn't really matter as long as I have my computer and grab some headphones. And if it's really loud, I have noise canceling ones, almost like yours, like big earmuffs. And I just put on a crank white noise. I'll do like fire or like thunderstorms. And I just listen to that. I can't do anything. I can't do any of that stuff that involves my brain. It has to be just white noise.
How extensive is that collection behind you? How far does those bookshelves go?
They go pretty far. So I have that. That's like some action, some war books, history, military, some fantasy, way more fantasy, Warhammer.
Listeners at home, I'm looking at a white bookshelf about, what is that, 9 shelves high?
Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah,
and
9
each one
shelves high.
They're double stacked, double layers. And then this
Packed
is
to the gills.
That's my horror section.
Uh-huh.
So on the top, you got a lot of all my Ed Lee books, Brian Keene, and mostly Stephen King.
I see the big head right there in the corner.
Yep, the big head. That's all my indie stuff. Some of my buddies down there. And the bottom here, you can see them all the way in the bottom. Those are my books that I have like for stock and all my boxes and shit that I've stacked up for
Gotcha.
storage.
Impressive, sir.
Thank you. I've read a lot of them. I'm an avid reader.
Do you have a pretty big TBR list?
Oh yeah, it grows every day. I get a lot of requests for blurbs and for beta reading and stuff, and I try to take on as many as I can, but I don't want to disappoint anybody. So I unfortunately have to turn some people down here and there, but I try to do what I can just because I feel like it's important to give back to everybody. Brian Keene blurbed Plastic Monsters for me, and I was like in awe. Edward Lee blurbed Billy Silver. And Ronald Kelly, who's a fucking legend, blurbed Only Psychos. And those guys are all just huge names and so respectable in the world of horror that if somebody asks me to do that for them, I feel like it's almost like my duty. Like it's humbling that they would even ask me to do that. Mm-hmm. So I try not to turn down anybody. Sometimes time constraints, they play a role in it too, but I do what I can.
Yeah, I saw that post you did of Edward Lee's book, his new collection of short stories.
Mm-hmm. It's like 3 novellas, kind of, and then 1 short story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mr. Tilling's Basement. Excellent. Yeah, he's just I'll email him routinely, and we'll go back and forth, and it's still, like, very surreal to me that I'm talking to Edward Lee, even though it's like an email. Like, it's just cool that we're, like I know him by name. Like, it's just really weird.
I bet. I had Nevada McPherson on the show, and she said that she painted and that a lot of famous authors like Flannery O'Connor painted because the attention to the detail of people and landscapes helped them paint vivid pictures of their characters and settings. So I was curious to know if you do anything that's unrelated to reading and writing that you feel helps you become a better writer.
Nothing artistic, I would say. I'm an avid hunter. So I think sometimes being in the woods and just having that like solitude and just sitting out there and listening to everything and really hyper focusing on the sounds and the sights and smells, that kind of really helps me and clears my mind a little bit. And I find that sometimes when I'm doing monotonous things, like if I'm driving, I get a lot of my ideas when I'm driving for some reason. Like I'll just be driving and be like, bang, it'll just click into my head. I don't know if it's because I'm so focused on the road that it leaves the creative part open. And it's the same thing with hunting, where I'm sitting in that stand and either I'm freezing to death and I'm just kind of focused on that. And I'm trying to focus on staying warm and looking for a deer or something like that. And then all of a sudden ideas will pop in my head. And I'm like, fuck, I got to try to dig my phone out. And I'm trying to put ideas in, and, so I'd say that's probably it.
Yeah, the two things you mentioned, hunting and driving, those are kind of similar in that, unless you've got somebody else in the vehicle with you, you're by yourself, you're away from the massive overstimulation that we're all subjected to every day. So in a sense, it's kind of like you're listening to white noise at home.
Yeah. And sometimes when I drive, I'll generally listen to podcasts. Every now and then I'll listen to like a book on tape. Like when I was going to Scares That Care, it's in Virginia. So it's about almost 8-hour drive, 7-hour drive. I'll do books on tape, but sometimes I just put music on. I'll put it very low and I just kind of listen to the road and I just focus on driving and I just go. And like I said, every now and then I'll have an idea. That's where the voice recorder really, really helps, because then as I'm driving, I can just hit the record button on the voice recorder on my phone and just talk stream of consciousness. And then when I get home or I get to my notepad, I can really sit down and flesh the notes out. But that white noise and the solitude, I think, really helps stimulate my brain.
Would you consider yourself an introvert? I mean, obviously you do a lot of social things, but being an introvert doesn't necessarily mean you're not social. You just kind of are turned inward.
No, I never really consider myself an introvert. Like, I don't have a problem public speaking. I don't have a problem talking to strangers. Like, I never got kidnapped as a kid, so that was good. But I was always the kid that would be like, hi, like, hello. And, I have no problem putting myself out there. If there's a group setting, I don't mind talking to people. So, no, I feel like I'm more extroverted than anything, which definitely helps when it comes to conventions, because some people are shy as they're walking around, and I want to make them feel comfortable. Like, I'm just a bum from New York that writes stupid books. Like, there's nothing to be scared of. You can come talk to me. You can come tell me that you like my book or you hated my book, or come take a fucking lollipop or a beer from the table and we'll hang out. Like, I'm just there to have fun.
Well, obviously, probably at the top of the list would be Edward Lee. And you've mentioned a few so far, but who would you say are your writing influences?
I mean, it's very cliche, but I have to say I like Stephen King. Stephen King and R.L. Stein. He's actually coming to an area not far from me. R.L. Stein is in the next month. I might actually have to go meet him, because I grew up on Goosebumps. I was born in 85 and I was, a 90s kid. So when all those Goosebump books came out, I had stacks of them. I had all of them. And I loved it. I loved those scary stories. And my reading level went through the roof as a kid. And by the time I was in 6th grade, I was probably reading Stephen King books, and just getting lost in some of those and being genuinely scared by some of them. Like, oh, this is really cool. I wish I could do this. And I started writing scary stories when I was a little kid, and I still have some of them. And probably my most popular one that I read live on my Facebook page one time was called The Chickenator. And it was about a 7-foot tall chicken that shot a machine gun with popcorn chicken. And he was killing kids, and they were killing them with barbecue sauce. But I have always told stories, and now people pay me for it, which is really cool.
As far as Stephen King, which one really hit you hard? Like, for me, when I was a teenager, The Stand was the one that really...
For me, there's 2 books, and I did 2 different points in my life. So I will definitely say Night Shift, and really mainly down to The Boogeyman. The Boogeyman is one of the scariest stories I've ever read in my life. The story scares everything shit out of me as a kid. It's just so well crafted. I think Stephen King's short stories are better than his novels in some cases, because he just knows how to write a short story. And as an adult, for me, the scariest thing he wrote was Pet Sematary, because I have 2 kids. And I read Pet Sematary when I was a kid, teenager, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I've seen the movie. It was cool. But as an adult with children, I read that and I'm like, this scares the shit out of me, because I don't know what I would do if I was in Lewis's situation. And you're like, I don't know. And that just, again, that human villain thing comes back into action, and it plays into your brain. And you're like, what would I do if this happened to me and I had this ability, and I had fucking Judd as my neighbor telling me I could do this? And so, yeah, Night Shift and Pet Sematary.
Yeah, it's funny how you read something when you're young, but it's not until you're older and you have life experience that gives you the perspective that the story is being told from, that it like goes from, oh, it was just something that was kind of creepy when I was a kid to something absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, your marketing and merchandising game is fucking strong, especially the detailed newsletter you maintain on Substack. So at what point in your writing career did you start marketing and merchandising?
Early on, I started with the merchandise stuff only because I love selling signed copies. So that's what I was doing before I jumped on here. I was getting some books prepared to ship out to some readers. I love selling signed copies because I love the one-on-one interaction. I loved interacting with the readers. And I was like, you know what? They're spending a little bit of extra money on the shipping. So I want to give them something a little nicer just to have like a thank you. Obviously, they're getting a signed book, but I want to throw some stuff in. So I started very quickly figuring out that if I go on Vistaprint, I can get these like business card size magnets in my book covers. And I have them for all of my books. It's Upside Down, it's Plastic Monsters. And I just started exploring different websites. So I kind of started merchandising almost right away with Billy Silver. And it has since exploded to where now I have different bookmarks with my name, my little Fox logo on it, all of my like stickers with that logo on it, another logo that I had drawn up. But really, at the beginning of this year is when I'd say, I'm trying to think when I released my website. I think that was in possibly May. I decided to take it to another level and open up a big cartel store, which is just pretty much a third party, not even a distributor. It's just like a third party that helps you build a website pretty much to sell merchandise on. And they do the tax and they do all the money and everything like that. And it's a much safer way than it's going person to person on PayPal because, you know, people have obviously had bad experiences. And I'm always looking to expand, you know, different merchandise stuff. I don't want to quite go like the Kiss route where I have like Daniel J. Volpe, like fucking underwear or anything like that.
You need the cardboard cutout.
I should. It'd be a short one. I'm not very tall, but, I do love all that cool stuff. So like, I like stickers. Like you can see I got my little water bottle here and I got my, you know, Spider Punk sticker on it. I got one of my stickers. I got my authors supporting a troop sticker on it. So I kind of like that stuff. So I'm like, I think other people would like it. So I started getting into that. And marketing wise, the marketing is amazing because I have amazing fucking readers. They are my marketing. They are sharing my stuff daily. They're leaving reviews for me. They're reaching out to me. I've had some really great friends that I've made just from reading my books. Donna Latham is my number one fan. She's my Annie Wilkes, as we always joke. And she is a fucking amazing person. I dedicated Plastic Monsters to her just because we have that type of a relationship. She bought me a pair of socks that has her face on it, which is pretty cool. I wore them to scares. So my marketing is my readers. Every now and then I will take out an ad or two. I'll go on some of these websites. You know, it's almost impossible to get on BookBub, but I try. Facebook, I'll do some Facebook ads here or there, just like a bomb, like just to throw out, like when I release Plastic Monsters, just to throw one big $100 Facebook ad out in the world. Mm-hmm. But really, TikTok, the influencers on there, some of those reviewers, they're great marketing tools. And I've made very good friends with some of them. One of them actually lives not far from me, so I've hung out with her before. She's come to my book signings and stuff. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for marketing. It's just people kind of do it for me right now, which is great.
And what's the origin of the Fox logo?
So my last name Volpe means fox in Italian.
Oh, okay.
It's like a direct translation. Gotcha. So I've always I have a bunch of fox tattoos on my arm, stuff for my kids. So I kind of thought it was a cool idea. I'm like, it's cool just to have that translated. And actually, Aron Beauregard's wife is the one who designed this logo here. Nice. You guys can see it's like a rabid looking fox with blood and yellow eyes. Uh-huh. She designed that for me. Actually, we were at our first convention, New Jersey HorrorCon last year. I was talking to her. She's fucking sweetheart. I don't know why she's with Aron. I joke, but she's really, really awesome.
Little
person.
Ball break in there.
Yeah, I know. She's amazing. So yeah, that's where the fox, all that stuff came from.
Well, how much time do you spend marketing versus the writing process?
My marketing, like I said, is mainly social media. So I try to dedicate as much time as I can to, it sucks sometimes because I sometimes feel like I live on my phone, but I really do appreciate every single share that I get, every single like that I get. And I try to make sure that I'm letting people know that. Like I said, that's my main source of marketing. It's just the word of mouth and making sure that my readers know that they're appreciated. So I will spend sometimes a couple hours a day. Generally speaking, I get up in the morning, I do my writing. And then if I have a little bit of a break before work, like if I'm eating breakfast or something like that, I'll be on my phone and I'll be going through and just trying to do everything, you know, answer everybody's questions or like them. I generally set myself roughly about $100 a month to spend in marketing. It's kind of my goal. Like if I'm going to buy ads or if I'm going to send books out to reviewers or these influencers on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. So I try to set myself a little bit of a budget just so that I have that money set aside or those books set aside. And yeah, that's pretty much how it goes for marketing.
And you mentioned one gentleman, I believe, that designed the artwork for Plastic Monsters.
So the artist that did Plastic Monsters, his name is Don Noble, and he's over at Rooster Republic Art. He did Plastic Monsters, Only Psychos, Left to You, and A Gift of Death. He did those 4 books for me. I've used a couple different cover artists for Billy Silver, the new Billy Silver cover. And Talia 1 was a guy named Michael Squid, who's another awesome artist, and he's also an author. And for Talia 2, I'm not going to reveal who that cover artist is. Neither of those 2 gentlemen. For Awakening Blood and So Sorry, we used a guy named Anton Rozovsky. He does most of Aron's covers. Have you ever seen any Aron's covers? That's the same artist that does them. And for Visceral 2, the book that I did with Pat, Pat actually did that cover.
Okay.
So I will bounce back and forth. I think some artists have different strengths, different weaknesses, and I like certain styles for certain books. Talia, like I said, I was going for a very particular look, especially for the second book. So I was like, oh, this one artist, he does a really good job with these images of women and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm going to go with him for this one.
Yeah, the 2 that really stand out to me is Talia with the blade on the tongue and Only Psychos.
Yeah, it was Talia. It's fun with the Talia covers. We got that cover done within like 2 hours. I messaged Mike and I'm like, hey, are you interested in doing a cover for me? He's like, yeah. I'm like, this is what I want. He's like, okay. He sent me a couple things. I'm like, nope, change this, this, and this. He's like, okay. He's super, super quick. Comes back, changes it. He's like, what do you think of this? I'm like, amazing. Let's work on the font. We got the font squared away and I'm like, okay, how much do I owe you? And that was it. And that cover, I have my little magnet here of the cover with her licking the razor blade.
That is just...
I got that made into like a 7-foot banner that bring me to convention. Yeah. I think I don't want to say it's an iconic cover, but it's a very noticeable cover.
It's eye-catching, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that when people see that cover, they're like, holy shit, what is that? I need to see that. And it draws people in, and hopefully they buy the book and hopefully they like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not for everybody. That's my most hardcore book for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the one I'm going to try next.
Yeah, it's very, you'll read the opening line and you're like, all right, either this is for me or this is not for me. Just by that first line is about a strap-on dildo.
Nice.
And it's the size of a fire extinguisher. So it's it's either.
Well, I got the visual already, and I haven't ran yet. So
yeah, that's the beginning. That's the safe zone.
So, can you tell me about your past and current publishers? I was looking at Plastic Monsters. Did you self-publish that one?
I did.
Okay. But before that, you were with D&T?
Yep. So I'm still with D&T. We just kind of go back and forth with some stuff with, if I decide I'm going to self-publish something. So D&T Publishing, run by Dawn and Tim Shea, 2 of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Dawn, I primarily deal with Dawn, but I have dealt with Tim before. Dawn is amazing to work with, super fair with the authors, will listen to your input on covers, editors, pretty much everything. She wants her authors to be happy. That's like first and foremost. Yes, the money is great. She's great to work with, and I've published many things with her. I think I published 3 books with her and a 4th one on the way, which is going to be the sequel to Gift of Death. It's called Black Hearts and Red Teeth, and that'll be out in December. I've worked with Death's Head Press when I did Visceral 2 with Pat Harrison, and I'm also working with Death's Head's offshoot, Dead Sky Inc., for a 3 chapbook series. And then I've done a couple things with some other smaller presses for anthologies. Evil Cookie Publishing, run by K. Trap Jones, another awesome author, top-notch publisher. Guy puts out great stuff. He's been releasing a lot of Ed Lee's stuff. I think Header 2 just came out. He did The Pig in the House, and Ed Lee put out The Ouija Pig, which is the 3rd book in that trilogy, through Evil Cookie. I've worked with Potter's Grove, run by River Dixon. He's done some cool stuff. He published some of Simon Cardy's earlier books. I really enjoy the self-publishing aspect as well. It's fun. It's challenging, but it's fun to go through it all yourself. It's obviously rewarding because you get to keep all of your royalties, but it's just nice to know that like you did this from start to finish. You made all the decisions about editing, formatting, cover, marketing, prices, promotion. You're in charge. So I do like that, but it is nice to sometimes turn things over to a publisher and be like, here you go. Just you take care of it and I'll just pay me when the money comes in.
Well, when you self-publish, are you using some sort of like software where you basically construct the way the book is bound, or how does that work exactly?
So I'm pretty basic. I use Kindle Create. So it's obviously through Amazon's Kindle program, and it's very, very easy to use. You pretty much drag and drop a Word document into it and it formats it for you. And you can change some minor things like text. If you saw in Plastic Monsters, I had little scalpels as my chapter breaks. I was able to put stuff like that, the cover image in there. where it says Plastic Monsters and has the scalpel. Like I was able to put that stuff in there. I know there's way more complicated things out there for people that are much more computer savvy. Like Aron is very good at formatting books through Microsoft Word. There's templates you can buy and use. I'm not that savvy. I use Kindle Create. I like the way it looks. It still looks professional. It's easy to use. I never have any issues with it going into the Kindle direct publishing. So because that's my primary publisher is through Amazon, there's no hiccups, there's no issues with it. And it just makes my life so much easier.
So this is for ebook only, or this is also for the hard copies?
It's for everything. Hard copies, ebook, paperbacks. Yeah, they do it all. And it pretty much you just pick your paper size. So if I say, all right, my hard covers are going to be 6x9s, my paperbacks are going to be 5x8s, you just plug that right in and it formats it for you.
Well, I counted at least 3 of your works on audiobook. Which format of your work seemed to sell the best? Be ebook, hard copy, audio?
I would say paperbacks. Paperbacks are my biggest seller. I do sell a lot of ebooks. Audiobooks are hit or miss. I think the main reason is because my audiobooks are fairly short. And I think the way Audible works, you get a credit. And I think people don't want to use a credit on a 3-hour book when you can use a credit on a 27-hour book. So the ebooks for me, or the audiobooks for me, don't sell as well. But the paperbacks are amazing. Like I move paperbacks through my online store from home, which you see here, and just my sales through Amazon, which my self-published books, I can obviously see them real time, but my published books through publishers, I have to wait monthly to see the numbers on that.
Well, judging from your output and the fact that you have a family and a day job, I don't know where you'd find the time, but have you thought of narrating one of your audiobooks?
I have thought about it, but I really don't have the equipment or the setup for it right yet. I have a little, like this door, if you can see it back here, that's underneath the stairs for the basement. Okay. So I honestly thought about taking that little spot and just getting some soundproofing and just soundproofing that little spot and then just trying to do it myself. I just don't know if I have the time or patience or know how to use like recording software. So maybe in the future I might try to do it, but at this point I'd just rather pay people that are competent and have a better voice and can do it themselves.
How would you do it? Would you emote spooky? Would you raise the register of your voice up if a female was speaking? And
it'd probably sound ridiculous. I'd probably try to do it because I've been turned off by audiobooks that are like that, where they're so like over the top. Yeah. Like I think it was Cabin at the End of the World. And the audiobook was that the female narrator was so bad. It was like comical. Like she's trying to do male voices and it was just, she tried too hard. It like took me out of the book. Whereas like Stephen Kazanowski has his book, The Ghoul Archipelago, and he has a female narrator and she does male voices very, very well. And it's an excellent zombie book. If anybody's out there looking for a zombie book that's very unique, she does a great job at it. So I don't know if I have the talent because those people are very talented. John Wayne Comunale is another very, very talented narrator. Mm-hmm. He narrated Billy Silver. He's excellent narrator.
So this one is of personal interest to me. You're also a co-host on the Written in Red podcast, along with Aron Beauregard, Carver Pike, and Roland Bursey Jr. So can you tell us about its creation and how long you guys have been producing it?
Yeah, so Written in Red, pretty much about, I'd say, a year and a half ago, Aron and I were talking, and we were still very new to writing, but we were very much out there. We were talking to a lot of people, just talking to people online and stuff, and people were asking us questions like, oh, especially when it comes to merchandise or writing and stuff, like, oh, how do you guys do this? How do you do that? So we were answering questions all the time, and we kind of thought, like, well, we should do like a little mini podcast just to try to give people a reference for information. Like, hey, I have a question about formatting. Where should I go? So we were like, oh, we'll do an episode on formatting. And we decided like, oh, you know what? We should really bring Roland in. Roland is an amazing writer. He's very, very well versed in audiobooks. He doesn't record them himself, but he's done a lot of them. Like he's had his books all converted into audio. And I think I was talking to Carver Pike about it. I'm like, yeah, we're thinking about doing this podcast. He's like, oh, that's cool. He's like, if you ever have guests, he's like, let me know. I'd love to come on because he's been at it for longer than any of us. So we're like, yeah, it'd be cool. So Aron and I kind of talked and we're like, you know what? Maybe we should bring him on as the 4th co-host. So we reached out to him. We're like, yeah, let's do it. And that's pretty much it from there. We just start recording and it's just a shit show. We get on there. Like the first couple episodes, I'm like hammered. And the first four episodes we recorded in one night. So if you watch them, I get progressively more and more drunk throughout each episode and tired. Because like the last one we finished recording, it was like 1 a.m. And I'm like, I drank like I'm drinking Evan Williams straight. And I was just trashed. But it's just a fun show to do. And when we get people that message us, email us, written and read podcast@gmail.com, they message us questions and they'll reach out and say, just thank you. Like, it really helped me. It pushed me through to start my writing up again. Like, those are amazing comments. And we're always open for questions. Now we've kind of morphed it into taking on guests. So now we're bringing on these other authors that have had way more time than us, way more experience than us, giving them an outlet to kind of share their trials and tribulations and give us some input. Like, I think next upcoming episode we have coming up like Jay Wilburn. Like, Jay Wilburn's been at this for probably decades. And the guy's an amazing writer, an amazing asset to the community. So it's really helpful to have just like masters of their craft on there. And we try to highlight some of the newer people as well. Like, not just all these seasoned veterans. Like, we had Rain Havoc on. She's pretty new. We had like Wes Southard. He's been around for a while, but again, in the grand scheme of things, he's still fairly new at it. Chris Triana, he's been doing it for quite a while. We're trying to get some bigger names, which we got some announcements coming up soon. But we had Ronald Kelly. I mean, Ronald Kelly's been writing since the fucking 80s. Mm-hmm. Like, that dude started writing before I was born, I think. And he's the nicest, most humble guy and a super talented writer. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We were talking earlier today about what ridiculous, stupid fucking costumes we're going to wear for our upcoming Halloween episode. Because last year we did it and I had like
any spoilers? We got to wait.
I don't even have mine yet. So last year I had like a giant blonde wig and a bandana and a Fu Manchu mustache. And I just kept yelling, brother, the entire time. And I was just drinking Miller Lights to my face.
That's funny. Do you guys publish that with any regularity or just when your schedules all align?
No, we do it every other Monday. An episode comes out right before the summer started. We fucking battened down the hatches and we knocked out as many episodes as we could. Like, we were doing 2 or 3 a week just to have them on reserve. So we didn't have to worry about getting at it during the summer schedule. So, they're all pre-recorded, but now we're starting to get through all those. So we're getting back into recording season. Should be coming up soon. We're going to do a few more solo episodes with just the 4 of us, and I'll probably bring some more guests back on to interview. But yeah, every other Monday, it's on all the major platforms. The best thing to do is to watch on YouTube because it's just fucking ridiculous.
You actually see you guys?
Yeah, you just see us. And a lot of times, me and Aaron will like bust Carver's balls. So he'll start talking. We just know we're going to start laughing. We start laughing at him before he even says anything. And he's like, fuck you. And yeah, it's just fun.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I assume you like horror movies, and this is where we explore the boundless realm of dark literature and film. So what's your favorite subgenre of horror, and do you like any other kind of dark literature like noir or the occult?
This is going to come as a shock to most people, but I'm not the biggest horror movie watcher. I do like them. I just watched, how was it the other day? Go Jam? Something like that. It was a Korean movie about found footage about an asylum. It's pretty good. It was on Prime. But my wife hates horror movies with like a passion. She's terrified of them. She's a big baby. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a lot of time to watch them. Me personally, like, I'm not a big TV person to begin with. Like, you could take my TV before you could take my books. Mm-hmm. I would gladly give up my TV before you took my books away.
Same.
But I do love I love found footage too. Like, I'm a glutton for it, even though some are so hokey and cheesy. Like, Hell House LLC, I think, is one of the best found footage movies and horror movies in general. But it was excellent, genuinely creepy. But I have to say, probably my favorite type of horror movie has got to be just good old slashers, like where it's almost like Talia, where I'm going to see some nudity, I'm going to see some kills, and I'm going to see some creative kills. And that's going to be it. And it's going to be fun. I could turn it on in the middle of it, and the storyline is there's a killer, and he's fucking killing people. And maybe some people are going to have sex at some point, and I'm going to see some boobs. And that's pretty much.
Definitely got to have that part.
Yeah. And like I said, I grew up in the 90s, and that was always like, oh, I want to watch Friday the 13th. I want to make sure I have the unedited version. See the counselors running around.
Well, so since you said your wife is just absolutely horror movies are a no-go, does she read any of your stuff?
Yeah, she reads it all.
Okay, so
she's read it all.
Just can't have the visual representation of it?
She doesn't like to be scared. She doesn't like the jump scare kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So she's just like, I don't like it. She's like, I don't have nightmares. The books, because she knows me, it's almost like the peek behind the curtain. Mm-hmm. So she knows me. So she knows it's just like stupid shit that I write. And she's like, it's not scary to me because I know you're my husband. Like, you made this up. Like, it's not scary. So that's why she doesn't mind. She reads it and she laughs at some of it. She's like, it's fucking gross, or, there's a lot of sex in this one. And
honey.
She's like, yeah.
Well, speaking of wife, family, what is the life of Daniel J. Volpe like outside of writing?
Uh, Pretty boring.
Sounds like writing keeps you pretty busy. I don't know if you have
Yeah,
time for much else.
I treat writing like a second job, and hopefully in the near future, I can make it my full-time job, and my only job. But I really try to dedicate most of my time. Obviously, I have two kids, so they're in activities and sports and stuff like that. So I try to obviously spend time with them. And when I get home from work, it's kind of like, all right, it's family time, and obviously stuff like this pops up. But I dedicate most of my time to writing, and if it's not writing, it's reading. And if it's not reading, it's marketing. And if it's not marketing, it's sleeping. So, I mean, I do have other hobbies and stuff. Like I said, I do enjoy the outdoors, hunting, fishing, going hiking and stuff like that. Working out, try to get an hour in here and there when I can, going outside, playing with the dogs, the kids, a lot of outdoor activities, take the kids for a bike ride and stuff like that. But like I said, generally, I try to treat writing as my second job, and I just get as much of it in as I can.
Yeah, when I messaged you, I think you were on vacation. I think you were posting pictures on a boat. Were you fishing or something?
Oh no, I was probably by the ocean. I was in Ocean City, Maryland, so I was probably on the beach.
Okay. So the writing as a second job, are you talking about maybe querying stuff or just having your own self-published, merchandise-driven setup?
I kind of like both. I kind of like being a hybrid thing, but I really do like self-publishing. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today about, because his wife is she has a book that she completed, and he's like, oh, she wants to do this and that and that. And I'm like, all right, so just tell her that if she goes with a major publisher, it's going to be 3 to 4 years before that thing sees the light of day. And he's like, really? I'm like, yes, they have schedules, they have contracts, they have all this stuff coming ahead of you. When you self-publish, you're it. That's it. I have 2 books that are finished right now that I could put out tomorrow if I wanted to. It's on my schedule. So I like doing that. I like having a nice backlist, because when I put one book out, it kind of builds up the backlist. So I don't want to wait. I'm a very impatient person. You can ask my parents and my wife, because they know I'm impatient. And when I get it done, I want to get it out. I want to get it to the masses. I don't know if I could sit there and sign with like a big publisher and have to wait 2 to 3 years to have my book out in the world. Maybe 1 or 2 here or there if I went that route in the future. But for right now, the self-publishing and small press is definitely the way to go for me. I'll probably just stick with the self-publishing for now. If I get something that I write and I think it has a shot at a mainstream audience, I might seek out an agent and maybe see if I can get something with a little bit bigger, bigger company. Like I have a book coming out with Crystal Lake in the near future, and Crystal Lake is a very, very reputable company. Not that D&T isn't, but Crystal Lake obviously has been around since, I think they're 10 years old now. They got a pretty wide reach. Maybe in the future, if I write something a little bit longer, something like I said that I feel has got a mainstream appeal. But right now, I write such vulgar, gross shit that it's really only appeals to the indie world. Like,
I guess I
don't think Penguin's calling anytime soon.
Yeah, I guess Simon and Schuster isn't going to want.
Yeah,
that's what's great about it, though.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the indie horror community is people. I credit a lot of this to Ed Lee, because I never knew people could write like this until I read like The Pig, and I'm like, holy shit! Like this is a book that's out in the world, and this is gross. And then I read like The Big Head, and you're like, somebody published this. And then I'm like, wow, this is a whole new subgenre for me. Whereas before I was thinking like, oh, Stephen King, and not that obviously he's Stephen King, but to know that this subgenre of extreme horror exists. Granted, it may not be mainstream unless you're like Clive Barker or Bret Easton Ellis, but to know that it exists and there's a readership for it, and they are ravenous and they love this shit.
Yeah.
The grosser, the better.
Well, I've had a blast talking to you, sir.
Thank you. I've had a great time.
As we bring the show to a close, is there anything you would like to plug or let your readers know about?
Yeah, well, so my new book, obviously, Plastic Monsters, is out now. It's available in all formats, Kindle or ebook, paperback, hardcover. If anybody ever wants to reach out to me, DanielJVolpeHorror@gmail.com. If anybody ever wants any kind of signed books, I always keep them in stock as best as I can. That's at DanielJVolpeHorror.com instead of Gmail, DanielJVolpeHorror.com. You find all my stuff there, some merchandise. I have a little Teespring store that it links to with some shirts and whatnot. I'm going to be doing a book signing. Should be coming up. I'm trying to think. I got a couple of them. I'm going to be in Massachusetts with Aron on, I think it's October 22nd at the Monster Expo out in Massachusetts. Yeah, written and read. Check that out. Check out all my buddies there. It'll be a great time. And my newsletter, if you guys want to subscribe to my newsletter, actually, what's today? I'm going to get one ready to go. Put it out on the 1st. So every newsletter comes out on the 1st of the month, generally at 5 a.m. because that's when I'm up. And that newsletter is free. It's on Substack. So if you follow me on social media, I'm on all the big social media platforms. check me out there. Get the newsletter. I'll keep you up to date on what I have coming out, what's out already, my appearances. I offer discount codes to any of the merchandise stuff through my newsletter. So if you want that newsletter, that discount code, feel free to sign up for the newsletter and you'll get that 15% off anything you purchase on Teespring. So that's pretty much it.
Sounds good. Listeners at home, all links will be in the description. And Daniel, thank you again for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone that tuned in. If you liked today's episode, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow the show on Instagram and YouTube. Stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.
Kamikaze, blinded by the show lights, paparazzi, they know I'm a gold mine. Everybody know me where I go, right? Suicidal, hanging with the low. I'm a legend, I'm a fixer, painting portraits, get the picture, like the paper, not the swisher. I'm your elder, call me mister. Y'all should probably do the math. I done been to hell and back. Remo had me in the abs. White boys hitting dabs. Went from bummy to your girl probably bumped me. Thoughts of things, turn a 5 to dime. Nothing to something. It's a classic tale like The Alchemist. Mama would be proud of this. Wonder where I'd be without this shit. Probably dining out and shit. Be easy just like the alphabet. Might wanna rewrite your shit. You ain't about this shit. No, you don't want these problems like calculus. How to master the bad ones, I done passed them up. She just fell in love with me and I ain't even had to fuck. Kamikaze, blinded by the show lights, paparazzi, they know I'm a gold mine. Everybody know me where I go, right? Suicidal, hanging with the low light. Kamikaze, blinded by the show lights, paparazzi, they know I'm a gold mine. Everybody know me where I go, right? Suicidal, hanging with the low light. I be gemmed out, zenned out, almost put the pen down. Now they focus lens when I hop up out the Benz now. I got my ends up, every move's a wins up. My life's a movie, so I turn the suspense up. God, hallelujah, we made it. Thank God I learned patience. I was all in my feelings, like get me out of this matrix. I was jumping on buildings, labels act like they ain't see. Now when they hit my line up, I just act like I ain't me. Fix God, no it can't be. All for one, I demand 3. Copycats, you are not me. My girl call me Poppy. Hand sand for you dap up. Whole city getting lapped up. Soon as we knew it was possible, then we knew we had it wrapped up. Kamikaze, blinded by the show lights, paparazzi, they know I'm a gold mine. Everybody know me where I go, right? Suicide.